Hello and welcome. CSS Positioning Challenge Absolute Positioning. Things are going to get even more serious today. If you thought relative positioning was unintuitive, well, we were just getting started. So let's dive into this. What we have here is a few boxes. I wrote a bunch of styles here already, and I noted here you can just ignore these. And you can also look at them, totally up to you, but these are to give us a base to work on top of. What we want, and you can see this in the image here, if I expand that a bit, you can see that what we're going for is we have these labels, at least that's what I'm calling them. They're just things that appear up in the corner, and they are relative to each of these boxes. So let's look at it over here in the live code. We've got these three boxes, and we want each of those labels. We have these three labels too. They're kind of just hanging out up at the top there, and that's sort of the point. That's what we're going to fix. We want them to be positioned relative to each of these boxes. And you'll notice I'm saying relative, and that's part of why this is so confusing. Where in CSS we write position absolute, and what that allows us to do is position something relative to something else. Whereas position relative was positioning something relative to itself. It's sort of just like if it was at the top of the page, you could move it up, down, etc. from that location. Absolute positioning says, I want you to move up, down, left, right, from some other element, from some other thing on the page, which is extremely powerful. It's much more powerful than, or much more useful than position relative. You'll find yourself doing it a lot. And if you look at this image over here, this is fairly common stuff you might do in an interface. You want like a badge, and you want to put it up in the corner of something. Absolute positioning makes that very easy. So what we want, to reiterate, is we have all these labels. They're all up here hanging out, and we want them to appear essentially here, here, and there. We have three labels, and we want them to be in the upper right-hand corner of each of our boxes. So let's clear that out, and because so much CSS is written already, the solution is actually extremely simple. Let's do it so that we can explain why. So we use absolute positioning to position all the label elements in the upper right corner of the three boxes. Okay, so we have these three boxes. Let's look at the HTML. We have these three boxes. What are these three boxes? So it looks like label card. We have, collapse that, if I collapse that, collapse. You see we have these three things. And I added different classes on the latter two so that I could change their color and whatnot. If you look at the product, where's product? Label product. So right here, you see that I just gave it a different background color and a different border radius. And the message app, I also gave it a different background color, text color, and I added that rounding so that it looks like a message bubble in certain messaging applications. But we have these three things. We have these three label cards. So going back up, label card, here we are. So label card is what we're interested in. We have all these three things, and they are, let's look at it, label. So again, let's look at each of these has roughly the same structure. We have these divs with a label class. Label, label, label. So we have all these label divs. And where is the styling? You'll see that they actually already have this thing that we're talking about, which is position absolute. Not position relative, position absolute. And we're going from the top edge, go -15 pixels, and from the right edge, go -15 pixels. So the obvious question here is, well, the right edge of what? The top edge of what? And right now, it's actually the document. The whole thing. You'll see that they're up there in the corner because let's say we do 0 and 0. They're all just smushed up in the corner there. And we can do 20, 20, and you'll see they're moving away from that corner over there. We can say 200 and they'll move well away from the top edge of the screen, and they're still only 20 pixels away from the right edge of the screen. So let's undo that. Let's bring back the negative values, and let's actually just solve this challenge. Label card. I want label card to have a position of relative. Whoa, there we go. You'll see that all of these labels moved from where they were positioned to this new thing. So what I really want to talk about is why that happened. And that's because when something is positioned absolutely, as in it has this line right here, position absolute, it's going to be positioned relative to the parent that has a position relative, or the window itself. You might not have a parent with position relative, in which case it'll just do what it was doing before, which is, we're saying, if you look at this styling here, position absolute, top, and right. We're setting top and right. So we're saying, essentially go to the upper right-hand corner. And if I remove this again, you'll see that they jump up to the upper right-hand corner, and now they jump to the upper right-hand corner, except of a different element. So it's the nearest parent. The closest parent that has position relative will be the thing that all of our absolutely positioned elements position themselves against. And so they have to be children, though. You'll see that label, this div, is indeed a child of labeled card. It's a child because it is inside this div. So let's just tweak these values a bit. Let's say 115. Let's say that wasn't that helpful. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you can see, just go 0 or -5, 15. So you see it's generally going upwards, away from the top edge of each of these boxes. We can do the same with the right, of course. We can say 25, 55, and so it's moving away and away and away and way more. And these are negative values, so often you'll see positive values, which would be move away from the right edge. And there you go. And we can do that one too. So the reason for this particular styling was, if you have 0 and 0, you'll see it's in the corner, and you can see it especially clearly over here, that it's perfectly right there in the corner. You can see it here too. It's perfectly nestled up in the corner there, and that's fine. The thing though is that for the particular UI that I was making here, I wanted to say it look more like a badge, which means we want to overlap. We don't want to just perfectly get right there in the corner. We want to actually go beyond the corner, to overlap with the edge a bit. So that is what the -15 pixels was for. It's saying go position yourself up a little bit outside the edge here. So the trick to remember though is that when you want to use absolute positioning, have an element out above it, outside of it, a parent element. It doesn't have to be direct parent like this. We can also, if we wrap this, put another div and reformat. You'll see that now the label div has another div as its direct parent, but the labeled card div is still a parent of that. So it doesn't have to be the direct parent. It can be any parent element. And you'll see that this didn't affect it at all. This div did not affect how this inner div positioned itself, because this div does not have position relative. It has position static because that's just the default. Without writing it anywhere, this is going to have position static. All right, so there you have it. Position absolute is really good for positioning your elements relative to other elements. When you have a UI where one element is sort of interacting with another element, it's relative to that other element, then position absolute is a really good option. And position relative, which we looked at before, is for positioning an element relative to itself, just moving it in some direction away from where it originally was. All right, that's the lesson. See you in the next one.